My wife always said that when your heart breaks as a parent, it cracks in places so deep you can't reach them with your fingers. The morning Lisa uninvited me from her wedding, I felt those unreachable cracks form. My only daughter, the same girl who once made me wear a plastic tiara to her tea parties, called to tell me I was no longer welcome at the most important day of her life. "Dad, it's just simpler this way," she said, her voice cold and distant through the phone. "Mark's family is paying for everything, and they think it would be awkward with you there." The truth stung worse than the pneumonia that had nearly taken my life 2 years earlier. It wasn't about awkwardness. It was about the money I couldn't give her when she asked. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. After hanging up the phone, I sat on my porch swing, the same one where I used to push Lisa as a child, her laughter floating through the summer evenings like fireflies. The memory felt like it belonged to another man in another lifetime. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks earlier. Cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering, addressed to Mr. Robert Carter. Not Dad, not even Robert, just a formal acknowledgment of my existence. I'd immediately marked the date in my calendar, circling it in red, already planning what I would say in my father of the bride speech. Now, that circle on my calendar stood like an accusation. The trouble began 6 months earlier when Lisa and her fiancé Mark came to visit. They had arrived in a shiny new car, both dressed like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Lisa hadn't visited in nearly 2 years, not even when I was hospitalized with pneumonia. But suddenly, there she was, sitting at my kitchen table where her mother used to serve Sunday dinners, sliding a folder of papers across to me. "Dad," she said, her voice sweet as honey, "we found our dream venue for the wedding. It's perfect, but we need a little help with the deposit." I looked at those papers, at the numbers that seemed to have too many zeros. The cost of the venue alone was more than I'd spent on her entire college education. "Lisa," I said gently, "I can't afford this. I'm retired now. I live on a fixed income." Her smile faltered, and Mark leaned forward, his voice sharp with entitlement. "But you have assets, your house, your retirement fund. Surely you could take out a loan." The suggestion hit me like a slap. "Those assets are what I live on," I explained. "They're what will pay for my care if I get sick again." I didn't add what hung in the air between us, that they would someday be hers anyway, but only after I no longer needed them. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Lisa's eyes, so like her mother's, turned to ice. "So you're saying your comfort is more important than my wedding day, than my happiness?" I reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. "Lisa, that's not what I'm saying at all. I can help with something smaller, maybe the flowers or the—" She stood up abruptly, cutting me off. "Forget it. Mark's parents will help. They actually care about our future." They left without hugging me goodbye. Mark's parting glance held something that looked unsettlingly like triumph. For weeks afterward, I tried calling Lisa. My messages went unanswered or were returned with terse texts. "Busy with wedding plans. Can't talk now." I sent a check for what I could afford, $3,000 that would stretch my budget thin. She cashed it without a thank you. And then came the call uninviting me from the wedding, as if my small contribution had been an insult rather than a sacrifice. That evening after Lisa's call, I found myself opening the cedar chest where I kept Martha's things. My wife had been gone for 5 years, but sometimes I still turned to her to tell her something before remembering she wasn't there. I pulled out our wedding album, fingers tracing over the faded photographs. Martha in her simple white dress, me in my borrowed suit. We'd married in the town hall with just 2 friends as witnesses, then celebrated with a picnic in the park. The whole day had cost less than $200, but I'd never seen Martha happier. "We never needed much, did we, love?" I whispered to the empty room. Something else caught my eye in the chest. A small velvet box. Inside was the pocket watch that belonged to my grandfather and his father before him. Gold, with intricate engravings of oak leaves around the edge. It had survived 2 world wars and the Great Depression.
My father had given it to me on my wedding day, and I had always planned to give it to Lisa's husband when the time came. A family tradition, passing a piece of history to welcome a new member. I held the watch in my palm, feeling its weight. Mark had never shown much interest in family or tradition. He came from money and had plenty of his own, with his father's successful law firm waiting for him. But the watch wasn't about monetary value. It was about belonging, about continuity. A message from the past to the future that said, you are now part of something larger than yourself. The idea came to me slowly, taking shape like a sculpture emerging from marble. I couldn't attend the wedding, but I could still honor tradition in my own way. I would send the watch to Mark as a wedding gift. Not to buy my way back into the ceremony, but to maintain the connection that Lisa seemed so determined to sever. To remind them both that family isn't just about who pays for what, but about history, memory, and the silent promises we keep. The next morning, I took the watch to a jeweler in town. Mr. Finley had been in business for 40 years and had cleaned this same watch for my father. He examined it carefully, his magnifying glass catching the light. Beautiful piece, Robert. They don't make them like this anymore. He opened the back, showing me the intricate gears and springs. Still keeps perfect time. I'll give it a good cleaning and polish for you. When I returned 3 days later, the watch gleamed like it must have when my great-grandfather first purchased it. Mr. Finley had placed it in a new case of polished cherry wood. One more thing, I said. Could you engrave something on the inside of the case? He nodded, and I handed him a slip of paper with the words I'd chosen carefully. Time passes, but family endures. Welcome to ours. Robert. At home, I wrote a letter to accompany the gift. I didn't mention being uninvited or my hurt feelings. Instead, I wrote about the watch's history, about the men who had carried it and the events it had witnessed. I wrote about how my grandfather checking the time as he waited for news of his son returning from war, about my father consulting it nervously outside the hospital room where I was born. I wrote about how I had used it to time Lisa's contractions when Martha went into labor. The watch had measured out the most significant moments of our family's life, and now I was entrusting it to Mark. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I sent the package 2 weeks before the wedding, using overnight delivery to ensure it arrived safely. Then I waited. The day of the wedding came, and I found myself unable to sit still. I puttered around the house, straightening things that didn't need straightening, checking the clock every few minutes as if it might tell me what was happening at the ceremony I wasn't allowed to attend. By evening, I was exhausted from the weight of my absence. I sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea, watching the sun set and wondering if Lisa was dancing at her reception, if she was happy, if she had thought of me at all. The phone rang at 10:37 p.m. I know because I checked my grandfather's pocket watch. The original had been a replica I kept for myself. When I saw Lisa's name on the screen, my heart stuttered. Had something gone wrong? Was she hurt? I answered immediately, my voice rough with worry. Lisa, are you all right? I heard shuddering breaths, then a sob. Dad. Her voice broke on the word. Just that. Dad. And in that single syllable, I heard the little girl who used to run to me with skinned knees and broken toys, trusting me to fix whatever was wrong. I'm here, I said softly. What is it, sweetheart? There was a long silence, punctuated by what sounded like her trying to compose herself. Finally, she spoke again. Mark opened your gift just before the reception. The watch. He showed it to everyone. He read your letter out loud. My throat tightened. I hadn't expected that. The letter had been personal, meant just for them. I'm sorry if that embarrassed you, I began. But she interrupted me. No, Dad. No. It was beautiful. Everyone was crying. Even Mark's father. She paused and then continued in a rush. And I realized what I'd done. Cutting you out. Acting like you didn't matter just because you couldn't give me money. I've been so awful to you, and then you send this incredible family heirloom with this letter about legacy and belonging and... How could you still be so kind to me after how you treated me? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with all the hurt of the past months. I looked out at the darkening yard, at the tire swing that still hung from the old oak tree where Lisa used to play.
Because I'm your father, I said simply. That doesn't change, no matter what. She was openly crying now. I made the biggest mistake. The wedding, it was all wrong. Too fancy, too formal. Mark's parents' friends everywhere, but half the people I really wanted couldn't come because we had to cut the guest list to afford the stupid ice sculpture. And the whole time, I kept thinking about what you said about your wedding with Mom, how it was simple but perfect because it was about love, not showing off. I closed my eyes, picturing Martha in that plain white dress, wildflowers in her hair. Your mother would have said the important thing is that you married the person you love. The rest is just window dressing. That's just it, Lisa whispered. The wedding wasn't about love. It was about status. Mark's parents kept talking about impressions and connections and what people would think. Nobody talked about happiness or partnership or building a life together. She took a deep breath. I need to ask you something, and please be honest. Do you like Mark? The question caught me off guard. During all the months of their engagement, she had never asked for my opinion. I chose my words carefully. I don't know him very well, Lisa. You haven't given me much chance to, but what I've seen, he seems more concerned with appearances than substance, more interested in what he can get than what he can give. There was a long silence, and I worried I'd gone too far. Then Lisa said quietly, "That's exactly what your letter made me see." When Mark read it out loud, he was showing off the watch like it was just another expensive thing he had acquired. But the words about family and history, they didn't mean anything to him. They were just nice sentences. My heart ached for her. Wedding night revelations were supposed to be about joy and future, not doubt and regret. Lisa, it's been an emotional day. Maybe you should... He laughed, Dad. She cut in, her voice suddenly hard. After he finished reading your letter, when people were wiping their eyes, he turned to his best man and laughed, said something about the old man trying to buy his way back in with a dusty old timepiece. He didn't know I heard him. My fingers tightened around the phone. Not for my sake, I'd already recognized Mark's character, but for Lisa's. To have that moment of vulnerability met with mockery must have been devastating. I'm so sorry, I said, meaning it deeply. Don't be, she replied, and I heard something new in her voice. Resolve. It showed me who he really is, who his family is too. They've been controlling everything, including me, from the start. I just couldn't see it because I was so blinded by the money and status and everything I thought I wanted. She paused. Dad, I've made a terrible mistake. The wedding? Lisa, many couples have doubts after. No, not the wedding. Pushing you away, choosing all this fakeness over what's real, over family. Her voice broke again. Can I come home? Just for a little while? I need to figure things out, and I can't do it here. Relief and concern washed through me in equal measure. Of course you can come home. This will always be your home. But what about Mark? You're married now. There was a strange sound on the other end of the line, something between a laugh and a sob. The marriage isn't legal yet. We were going to sign the papers tomorrow. The ceremony today was just for show. She took a deep breath. I'm going to tell Mark tonight that I need time to think. His parents have booked us on a flight to Bali tomorrow for the honeymoon. I don't think I'll be on it. My mind raced with practical concerns. Do you need me to come get you? Where are you staying? At the Grand Hotel downtown. The reception's still going on downstairs, but I told everyone I needed a moment alone. There was movement on her end of the line, the sound of a closet door opening. I can get a cab. I just need to pack a few things. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said firmly. Wait for me in the lobby. The drive to the hotel was a blur. I parked haphazardly in the drop-off zone, not caring if they towed my old Buick. The lobby was all marble and crystal, everything screaming wealth and exclusivity. And there was Lisa, still in her wedding dress, although she'd thrown a cardigan over it and changed into flat shoes. She had a small suitcase beside her, and her makeup was smeared from crying. When she saw me, she stood frozen for a moment. Then she ran across the lobby and threw herself into my arms like she used to do as a child coming home from school. "Dad," she whispered against my shoulder, "I'm so sorry." I held her tightly, feeling the delicate beating of her expensive dress under my hands. "It's all right," I said. "Everything's going to be all right." And for the first time in months, I believed it might be true. As we walked to the car, Lisa looked back at the hotel, light and music spilling from the ballroom windows. What will people think? What will they say? Her voice was small, worried. I helped her put her suitcase in the trunk, then turned to her with a small smile. "They'll talk for a week, then find something new to gossip about. What matters is what you think and say, Lisa, and whether you can look in the mirror and respect the person looking back at you." She nodded slowly, something like her old determination returning to her eyes. I left a note from Mark, asked him to give me space to think. I said I'd call him tomorrow. She climbed into the passenger seat of my car, carefully arranging her dress. "I don't know what happens next, Dad. I've never walked away from anything before." As I started the engine, I glanced at her. In the dim light, with her veil discarded and her carefully styled hair coming loose, she looked younger, more vulnerable, but also more authentically herself than I'd seen her in years. "That's not true," I said gently. "You walked away from me when I couldn't give you what you wanted. The question is, can you walk back?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the city streets as we drove toward the outskirts, toward home. "I want to," she finally said. "I want to be the person who would have been happy with a simple wedding and real love, not the person who demanded an ice sculpture and married for status." She turned to me, eyes shining with tears and determination. "I want to be your daughter again." I reached over and took her hand, feeling the unfamiliar weight of the new ring on her finger. "You never stopped being my daughter, Lisa, not for 1 minute." As we turned onto the familiar road leading home, the headlights caught the old oak tree in the front yard, the tire swing moving gently in the night breeze. Lisa's grip on my hand tightened. "Do you think it's too late to fix things? To become the person I should have been?" I thought about the pocket watch, about generations of imperfect people doing their best, making mistakes, finding their way back to what mattered. About time passing, but family enduring. "It's never too late," I told her. "That's the thing about time. As long as you have some left, you can always choose to use it differently." When I pulled into the driveway of my modest 2-bedroom house, the porch light cast a warm glow that felt like a welcome home. Lisa sat quietly in the passenger seat of my car, her wedding dress rustling as she shifted to look at the familiar surroundings. The house wasn't grand, just a simple ranch-style home with faded blue shutters and a garden that had seen better days, but it had sheltered our family through joy and heartbreak alike. "It looks exactly the same," Lisa murmured, a hint of wonder in her voice. "I thought it would feel smaller somehow." I turned off the engine. "Some things change, some stay constant." I glanced at her. "That's not always a bad thing." Inside, everything was just as I'd left it. Dishes from my solitary dinner still in the sink, the day's newspaper folded on the coffee table, a cardigan of Martha's that I couldn't bear to give away draped over her reading chair. Lisa stood in the entryway, suddenly looking lost in her elaborate wedding dress, like an exotic bird that had flown into a humble farmhouse. "Your room is still there," I said gently. "I haven't changed anything." She nodded, blinking back tears. Can I take a shower first? I need to get out of this dress." "Of course. There are fresh towels in the linen closet." While Lisa showered, I made up her bed with fresh sheets that smelled of sunshine from being dried on the line outside. I found her old University of Michigan sweatshirt in a drawer and laid it out with a pair of pajama bottoms. Then I went to the kitchen and put on a pot of coffee, decaf since it was nearly midnight. Some situations called for a warm cup regardless of the hour. When Lisa emerged, her face scrubbed clean of makeup and her hair damp around her shoulders, she looked 10 years younger. She'd found the clothes I'd left out and changed into them. The wedding dress hung in a ghostly white cloud over the shower rod in the bathroom. "Better?" I asked, handing her a mug of coffee. "Much." She curled her legs beneath her on the sofa, the same spot where she used to sit to watch Saturday morning cartoons. I feel like I can breathe again. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the familiar creaks and settling sounds of the old house around us. Through the window, I could see the moon casting silver light over the backyard where Lisa had built countless snow forts and hosted summer sleepovers. "I don't know what I'm going to tell Mark," she finally said, her voice small. "Or his parents? Or our friends?" She cradled the mug between her palms. "Everyone will think I've lost my mind." I considered my words carefully. "What matters is whether you've found your heart." Lisa looked up at me, her eyes wide and vulnerable. "When did I become this person, Dad? So caught up in appearances and status. Mom would be so disappointed in me." "No," I said firmly. "Your mother would never be disappointed in you for making a mistake. She'd only want you to be brave enough to correct it." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I can. I'm not sure I'm that brave." I leaned forward. "Do you remember when you were 8 and you were too afraid to jump off the high dive at the community pool?" A small smile touched her lips. "You sat up there with me for an hour. And I told you that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway." I reached out and took her hand. "You can be afraid of what people will think, Lisa. That's natural. But don't let that fear make your decisions for you." She squeezed my hand. "I've been letting fear drive for a long time, haven't I? Fear of not having enough, fear of not being enough." The insight surprised me. It showed a self-awareness I hadn't seen in her for years. When did that start? Lisa stared into her coffee. "Maybe after Mom died. Everything felt so fragile then, like the ground could disappear at any moment." She looked up. "And then when you got sick with pneumonia, it scared me, Dad, more than I let on. The thought of losing you too?" Understanding dawned. "So you pulled away, attached yourself to Mark and his family's wealth because it felt solid." "Solid and secure," she admitted. "The Blakemores never seem worried about anything. They have so much money, so many connections. Nothing touches them." She sighed. "At least that's what I thought. But they're touched by different things. Appearances, reputation, status. They just hide their fears behind designer clothes and charity galas." I nodded, remembering the few interactions I had had with Mark's parents, their practiced smiles, the way they assessed my modest home with barely concealed disdain. "Security comes in many forms, Lisa. Not all of them have to do with bank accounts." She looked around the living room, her gaze lingering on the family photos that lined the mantel, the quilt her grandmother had made that was draped across the back of the couch, the bookshelves stuffed with well-worn paperbacks and board games with missing pieces. "I know that," she whispered. "I used to know that." The clock on the wall chimed 1 in the morning. Lisa's eyelids were drooping, the emotional exhaustion of the day finally catching up with her. "You should get some sleep. Things will seem clearer in the morning." She nodded but didn't move. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "How did you know Mom was the right one? How were you so sure?" The question carried the weight of her current dilemma. I closed my eyes, traveling back across decades to the day I first met Martha. "I wasn't sure right away," I admitted. "That's a myth people tell. Love at first sight makes for good movies, but real love grows. What I did know was that she made me want to be better. Not wealthier or more successful, just better, kinder, more honest." I opened my eyes to find Lisa watching me intently. And when I was with her,
I never felt like I had to pretend to be someone I wasn't. Lisa absorbed this, then asked in a near whisper, "Do you think it's possible to marry the wrong person for the right reasons?" "I think it's more common to marry the wrong person for the wrong reasons," I replied gently. "Fear isn't a good foundation for a lifetime commitment, Lisa." She nodded slowly, then stood and came over to kiss my cheek. "Thank you for coming to get me tonight. I don't deserve it after how I've treated you." Family isn't about deserving. It's about belonging, always. The words seemed to touch something deep in her. She hugged me tightly, then headed for her childhood bedroom. At the doorway, she paused. "Dad, that watch, was it really meant for Mark? Or did you send it hoping I would see it and remember what really matters?" I smiled.
A bit of both, maybe. Good night, sweetheart.
Good night, Dad.
The next morning, I woke early out of habit, made coffee, and was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table when Lisa appeared around 9. She looked rested, calmer, though her eyes still carried the weight of decisions to be made. "I turned my phone on," she said without preamble, pouring herself coffee. 23 missed calls, 15 from Mark, the rest from his mother and our friends. She sat across from me. "I texted him that I'm safe, that I needed space to think, and that I'll call him later today." "What did he say?" "That I'm embarrassing him, that I need to get myself together and come back before people start talking." She stirred sugar into her coffee with more force than necessary. "Not, 'Are you okay?' or 'I'm worried about you,' just concerned about what people will think." I raised an eyebrow. "And how does that make you feel?" "Oddly relieved," she admitted. "Like it confirms what I already knew but didn't want to face." She looked out the window at the morning sunlight filtering through the oak tree. "I don't love him, Dad. I don't think I ever did. I loved what he represented. Security, status, a certain kind of life, but not him." The confession hung in the air between us. "That's a hard thing to admit," I said. "It takes courage." She nodded. "The hard part is going to be telling him and dealing with the fallout." "You don't have to do it alone." Her smile was grateful but determined. "No, I do. I got myself into this. I need to be the one to end it properly." She took a deep breath. "But first, there's something else I need to do." She stood and went to the hall closet, rummaging until she found what she was looking for, an old photo album bound in faded blue leather. She brought it back to the table and opened it carefully. Inside were pictures of her childhood, Lisa on her first bicycle, at dance recitals, building sandcastles at the lake, opening Christmas presents. "Look how happy I was," she murmured, tracing a finger over a photo of herself at about 7, gap-toothed and beaming, proudly holding up a fish she'd caught. "We didn't have much money, but I never felt poor." "You weren't," I said simply. "You were loved." Lisa turned pages slowly, revisiting her history. She paused at a photo of the three of us, Martha, Lisa, and me, at a county fair when Lisa was about 12. Martha's arm was around Lisa's shoulders, and I stood beside them, all of us laughing at some forgotten joke, cotton candy in our hands. "Mom always said that joy doesn't come from things, it comes from connection." She looked up at me. "When did I forget that?" I shook my head. We all lose our way sometimes. The important thing is finding the path back. After breakfast, Lisa asked if she could borrow my car. "I need to see Mark in person," she explained. "I owe him that much." I handed her the keys without question. "Take all the time you need." While she was gone, I busied myself with yard work. The garden had been neglected during the weeks I'd been focused on Lisa's wedding and been its aftermath. I was on my knees pulling weeds when Mrs. Sullivan from next door came over, curiosity barely disguised as neighborliness. "I thought your daughter was getting married yesterday, Robert. Wasn't that the big day?" I straightened up, wiping soil from my hands. It was. She waited for me to elaborate, and when I didn't, pressed on. "Then why did I see her car in your driveway this morning? And where's her new husband?" I met her gaze steadily. Lisa needed to come home for a bit. As for the rest, that's her story to tell if she chooses. Mrs. Sullivan looked disappointed, but nodded. "Well, you tell her I said hello, and that I'm here if she needs anything." Behind the nosiness was genuine concern, which I appreciated. "I'll do that, thank you." Lisa returned around 3 in the afternoon. Her face was pale but composed. She sat beside me on the porch steps, both of us looking out at the quiet street where she'd learned to ride a bike. "I told him," she said simply, "that I couldn't go through with it, that I was sorry for the hurt and embarrassment, but that marrying him would be a mistake for both of us." "How did he take it?" She sighed. "Badly at first. There was shouting, accusations. He said I was ungrateful after all his family had done for me." She twisted her engagement ring, which was still on her finger. "Then he got quiet, which was worse somehow. He said he'd always known I wasn't really their kind of person, and that I'd regret losing the chance to become a Blakemore."
"And do you think you will? Regret it, I mean." She slipped the ring off and held it in her palm, examining the large diamond that caught the afternoon sun. "No. I think I'll regret that I didn't listen to my instincts sooner, that I almost traded my name, your name, Mom's name, for something that looked shinier, but wasn't." She closed her fingers around the ring. "I need to return this and figure out how to pay people back for the gifts." "One step at a time," I advised. "You've done the hardest part today." She leaned her head on my shoulder, something she hadn't done in years. "I feel terrible about hurting him, Dad, but also lighter, like I can breathe properly for the first time in months." We sat in companionable silence as the afternoon shadows lengthened across the lawn. Finally, Lisa spoke again. "I don't know what comes next. I've spent so long planning for this one day, for being Mrs. Mark Blakemore, that I haven't thought about what I actually want." "What did you want before you met Mark?" I asked. "What were your dreams then?" She considered this. "I was going to get my master's in education. I wanted to teach elementary school." A smile touched her lips. I loved working with the kids during my student teaching. Their honesty, their curiosity, how excited they'd get about the smallest discoveries. "That sounds like the Lisa I know." She nodded slowly. "I put all that aside when I met Mark. His mother said teaching was a lovely hobby, but not a serious career for someone marrying into their family." Her expression hardened. "I can't believe I listened to her." "It's not too late," I pointed out. "The university will still be there." "I'd have to find a job, save up for tuition again." She looked at me. "I might need to stay here for a while, if that's okay." "This is your home, Lisa, for as long as you need it." Her phone buzzed with another text. She glanced at it and grimaced. "Mark's mother. She says she's deeply concerned about my mental health and has scheduled an appointment with their family therapist for tomorrow." Lisa turned the phone off and slipped it into her pocket. "They still think they can manage me like some sort of PR crisis." "What will you tell her?" "The truth, that I'm perfectly sane, saner than I've been in years, actually." Lisa stood up, stretching. "I need to go back to the hotel at some point and get my things, and figure out how to deal with all the wedding gifts." "We'll tackle that tomorrow," I said. "For tonight, how about we order pizza and watch one of those terrible sci-fi movies your mother always hated?" Lisa's laugh was surprised but genuine. "The ones with the rubber aliens and bad special effects? Mom used to say they'd rot our brains." And yet, here we are, brains intact. I stood up, knees creaking a bit. What do you say? Pizza, bad movies, no talk of weddings or Blakemores for one night. Her smile reached her eyes for the first time since she'd arrived. That sounds perfect. That evening, with empty pizza boxes on the couch table and a cheesy alien invasion movie flickering on the TV, Lisa curled up on the couch like she used to as a teenager. Halfway through the film, she turned to me. "Dad, thanks for sending the pocket watch, even though it didn't work out the way you intended. I think it worked exactly as it was meant to. It found its way back home, just like you." She considered this, then nodded. "Maybe some things are meant to stay in the family. And some people," I added softly. The next few days developed a gentle rhythm. Lisa slept late, something she rarely allowed herself to do in her life with Mark. She took long walks around the neighborhood, reacquainting herself with the streets and houses of her childhood. She called the hotel and arranged to pick up her belongings, which she brought back in 3 large suitcases. The dress remained draped over the shower rod, neither of us quite ready to decide its fate. 6 days after the wedding that wasn't, we were having a quiet breakfast when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and a stern expression. Gerald Blakemore, Mark's father. "Mr. Carter," he said formally, "I apologize for coming unannounced. I'm here to speak with Lisa." Before I could respond, Lisa appeared behind me. "It's okay, Dad. I'll talk to him." She stepped onto the porch. "Gerald, would you like to sit down?" I retreated to the kitchen but kept an ear tuned to the conversation on the porch. Their voices were too low to catch everything, but the tone was civil, if tense. After about 20 minutes, I heard the sound of a car starting. Then Lisa came back inside. Her expression was thoughtful, but not upset. "He wanted to see if I'd come to my senses yet. He offered to have the Blakemore family therapist speak with me, to help me work through my cold feet." "And what did you tell him?"
That my feet aren't cold. They're finally warm again, walking on solid ground. She smiled a little. I also told him I'd have the ring couriered to their house tomorrow, and that I'm consulting a lawyer about how to properly return or reimburse for all the wedding gifts. I nodded, impressed by her composure. How did he take that? Better than I expected. I think he actually respects decisiveness, even when it's not the decision he wants. She sipped for coffee. He did say something interesting as he was leaving, that Mark has been more angry than heartbroken, which should tell me all I need to know about whether I made the right choice. Wise man in that respect, at least. Yeah. Lisa's phone buzzed with a text. She checked it, then looked up with surprise. It's Jamie, my old roommate from college. She's in town and heard what happened. Wants to know if I'd like to meet for coffee. You should go, I encouraged. It would be good for you to talk to someone your own age about all this. Lisa hesitated. I'm not sure I'm ready to face people's questions and judgment. Jamie was your friend before Mark, wasn't she? She knew the real you. That's true. Lisa typed a reply, then set her phone down. I said yes. We're meeting at that little cafe downtown in an hour. She looked suddenly nervous. What do I even wear? Everything I brought with me screams Blakemore Fiancé. I smiled. Why don't you check your old closet? Your mother couldn't bear to get rid of anything. There might be something there that's still you. An hour later, Lisa emerged from her room in a simple blue dress we'd bought together for her college graduation, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. She looked younger, softer, more herself than I had seen her in years. How do I look? She asked, twirling once. Like Lisa Carter. Perfect. Her smile was worth every difficult moment of the past week. She grabbed her purse, not the designer one she'd arrived with, but an old canvas tote with a faded university logo. I won't be long, just coffee. Take your time, I told her. Reconnecting with old friends is important. After she left, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes up and down the sidewalk. One little girl with pigtails reminded me of Lisa at that age, fearless on her bicycle, racing ahead of the boys as if daring them to catch up. My phone rang, startling me. The number was unfamiliar. Hello? Mr. Carter? This is Mark Blakemore. His voice was stiff, formal. I was hoping to speak with Lisa. She's not here right now, Mark. A pause. Do you know when she'll be back? I don't, sorry. Would you like me to have her call you? Another, longer pause. No, that won't be necessary. He stopped, and I heard him take a deep breath. I wanted to thank you for the watch. It's quite something. She looked at me, eyes bright with purpose. It feels good to make plans that are about giving something, not just acquiring things. I nodded, recognizing the daughter I'd raised beginning to reemerge from behind the facade she'd constructed. Mark called while you were out, I mentioned. Her expression clouded. What did he want? To say he thinks you made the right choice, that you would have made each other miserable. I watched her face carefully. He also said he appreciates the watch now, that it gave him perspective. Lisa absorbed this, her expression thoughtful. That doesn't sound like the Mark I know. Maybe he's finding his way too. I paused. People can surprise you. She nodded slowly. Yes, they can. She leaned her head back against the swing. I'm going to be okay, aren't I, Dad? I looked at my daughter, strong, resilient, finding her way back to herself one choice at a time. More than okay, I assured her. You're going to be extraordinary. 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, Lisa's life had begun to take on a new shape. The first signs of autumn touched the oak tree in our front yard, a few leaves turning golden at the edges. Inside, Lisa had spread university brochures and financial aid forms across the kitchen table, her old laptop open to the graduate school application portal. The deadline for spring admission is next Friday, she said, tapping her pen against her teeth, a habit from childhood she'd apparently never outgrown. If I hurry, I can still make it. I set a mug of tea beside her elbow. You've always worked well under pressure. Remember that science project in 8th grade? Built an entire ecosystem in a weekend. She smiled at the memory. Mom stayed up with me until midnight, helping me glue little plastic trees to the diorama, and then slept through church the next morning. The shared recollection warmed the kitchen better than any furnace. Your mother would be proud of you now, Lisa, taking control of your path. Lisa's smile faded slightly. Would she? After everything that's happened? The wedding disaster, all those people I disappointed? I pulled out a chair and sat beside her. Your mother never measured success by how you looked to others. She measured it by whether you were living with integrity, being true to yourself. Lisa nodded slowly. I'm trying to remember that. She gestured to the application forms. This feels right, like I'm finding my way back to the person I was meant to be. The doorbell interrupted our conversation. Lisa glanced at me, eyebrows raised. We weren't expecting visitors. I went to answer it, pulling open the front door to find an elegantly dressed woman in her 50s standing on my porch. Victoria Blakemore, Mark's mother. Mr. Carter, she said coolly. I apologize for dropping by unannounced. I was hoping to speak with Lisa. Before I could respond, Lisa appeared behind me. Her posture stiffened visibly at the sight of her almost mother-in-law. Victoria, this is unexpected. Victoria's perfectly made-up face revealed nothing. "May I come in? I believe we have matters to discuss." I glanced at Lisa, who nodded slightly. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "Would you like some tea?" "No, thank you." Victoria swept into our modest living room, her designer outfit and immaculate hair making our comfortable but worn furniture seem suddenly shabby. She remained standing, clutching her handbag like a shield. "I won't take much of your time." She paused, seeming to struggle with her words, perhaps for the first time in her perfectly controlled life. "I came because my son showed me something that made me reconsider certain things." Lisa exchanged a quick glance with me. "The pocket watch?" Victoria nodded. "And more specifically, the letter your father wrote to accompany it." She turned to me. "Mr. Carter, your words about family, about history and belonging, they were quite affecting." I hadn't expected this. "Thank you." Victoria turned back to Lisa. "It made me realize that perhaps I've been measuring value by the wrong metrics, that there are kinds of wealth that have nothing to do with bank accounts or social connections." She straightened her shoulders. "I still believe you made a mistake in how you handled things. The manner of your departure was unfortunate, but I no longer believe you made a mistake in recognizing that you and Mark were mismatched." Lisa's eyes widened. "I don't know what to say." Victoria allowed herself a small smile. "You don't need to say anything. I simply wanted you to know that there are no hard feelings, at least not from me. Gerald will take longer to come around, but he will eventually." "And Mark?" Lisa asked softly. "Mark is—" Victoria chose her words carefully. "He's reflecting. Your decision forced him to confront certain aspects of himself that he'd preferred to ignore. It's not a comfortable process, but I believe it will be good for him in the long run." I watched Lisa's shoulders relax slightly at this news. She had been carrying the weight of Mark's hurt alongside her own struggles. Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt. "That's all I came to say. Oh, and also that I've taken care of the wedding gifts. Everything has been returned with an appropriate note. You needn't concern yourself with that." Lisa blinked in surprise. "You didn't have to do that." "Perhaps not, but it seemed the right thing to do." Victoria moved toward the door, then paused. "Your father's watch. It really is quite remarkable. The history in it, the connections across generations." She glanced at me. "You were fortunate to have such roots, such continuity." The observation seemed to hold a question, or perhaps a recognition of something lacking in her own life despite all its outward perfection. "I agreed simply. "I am." Victoria nodded once decisively. "Well, goodbye then. I wish you well with whatever comes next, Lisa." After she left, Lisa and I stood in silence for a moment, processing the unexpected visit. "That was surprising," I finished for her. "Very." Lisa sank onto the couch. "I never thought I'd hear Victoria Blakemore admit that money and status aren't everything." I sat beside her. "People can surprise you when given the chance." Lisa leaned her head against my shoulder. "Your letter about the watch, what exactly did you write? It seems to have affected both Mark and Victoria more than I realized." I thought back to the words I had carefully composed. I wrote about family, about how wealth isn't just measured in dollars, but in connections, in shared history, in the people who remember your stories and carry your legacy. I smiled ruefully. I suppose I was trying to give Mark something I thought he lacked, a sense of belonging to something larger and older than himself. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Maybe that's what Victoria recognized, that for all their money and social position, they're missing something we've always had. Perhaps. I squeezed her hand. "Now, shouldn't you be finishing that application? The deadline won't wait, even for this unexpected detente with the Blakemores." Lisa laughed and returned to the kitchen table.
but I noticed a new lightness in her movements, as if one more burden had been lifted from her shoulders. The next day, Lisa drove to the university to submit her application in person and meet with an advisor about the graduate program. She returned with her eyes bright with excitement. Dr. Reynolds remembers me from undergrad. He says if I can get my application in by Friday, he'll personally review it. And there's a teaching assistantship opening that would cover half my tuition. That's wonderful. It gets better. She dropped her bag and jacket on a chair. Jamie called while I was driving home. The literacy program needs someone to coordinate the elementary school volunteers. It's a paid position, not much, but it would help with expenses while I'm in school. I smiled at her enthusiasm. Sounds perfect for you. I think it might be. She pulled out a chair and sat across from me at the kitchen table.
Dad, I've been thinking. It's time for me to find my own place again. My heart sank a little, though I tried not to show it. Having her back home had filled the house with life again. Oh, not right away, she added quickly. But once I know about the program and the job, I've imposed on you long enough. You're not imposing, Lisa. This is your home. Her smile was gentle. I know, and I'll always be grateful that I could come back to it when I needed to. She reached across the table and took my hand. But I need to stand on my own 2 feet again, build a life that's truly mine, not defined by Mark or even by you. I understood what she was saying, and part of me, the father who had raised her to be independent, was proud. Another part, the man who had lived alone too long, was already anticipating the quiet that would return when she left. Of course, whatever you think is best. She squeezed my hand. I've learned something important these past weeks, Dad. Running away from Mark wasn't enough. I need to run towards something. My own purpose, my own dream. Not just escape one mistake, but actively build something better. That's very wise. Lisa grinned. I had a good teacher. She stood up. Now, I promised Jamie I'd meet her tonight to discuss the literacy program. Can I borrow your car again? Mine's still making that funny noise. Keys are by the door. And Lisa? She turned back. I'm proud of you. For all of it. Her smile lit up the room. Thanks, Dad. After she left, I wandered through the quiet house, straightening things that didn't need straightening. In Lisa's room, the wedding dress still hung over the shower rod, neither of us having decided what to do with it. I touched the delicate fabric, thinking of all it represented, the dreams she'd had, the mistakes she'd made, the courage it took to walk away from both. An idea began to form in my mind. I made a phone call, then another. By the time Lisa returned home that evening, I had a plan. How was your meeting? I asked as she came through the door, cheeks flushed from the cool evening air. Amazing! Jamie is so passionate about this program. The kids they're working with, most of them are reading 2 or 3 grade levels below where they should be. But with consistent one-on-one attention, they're making incredible progress. She hung up her jacket. I start Monday as a volunteer, and if all goes well with the coordinator position, I could start that in November. That's wonderful news. It really is. She yawned. I'm exhausted, though. I think I'll head to bed early. Actually, I was hoping we could talk first. I had an idea about the wedding dress. Lisa's expression clouded slightly. Oh, I've been avoiding thinking about that. I know, but it seems a shame to let it just hang there, reminding you of regrets, when it could do some good. She looked at me curiously. What do you mean? I called Maggie down at the community center today. They're having their annual fundraiser next month, the one that helps low-income families with school supplies and winter coats for their kids. Lisa nodded. I remember. Mom used to help organize that. Well, Maggie thought the dress would make an excellent auction item. It's never been worn, technically, and it's designer quality. I watched her face carefully. All the proceeds would go directly to the Children's Fund. Lisa was quiet, considering. Transform something that represents my biggest mistake into something that helps children in need? Exactly. Turn regret into opportunity.
A slow smile spread across her face. I love it. It's perfect. She hugged me impulsively. You always know how to make meaning out of messes, don't you? I returned her embrace. I've had plenty of practice. The next morning, Lisa carefully packed the wedding dress in its garment bag and drove it to the community center herself. When she returned, her eyes were damp, but her smile was genuine. Maggie says they might be able to get over $3,000 for it at auction. That's enough to provide winter coats for every child in the program. Your mother would be thrilled. She nodded. I kept thinking about her when I was there, how she always said that the best way to heal yourself is to help someone else. Wise woman, your mother. The wisest. Lisa hung her keys on the hook by the door, a small gesture that spoke of belonging, of home. While I was at the center, I saw a flyer for their mentor program. They're looking for adults to be paired with teenagers who need positive role models. Sounds like something you'd be good at. She nodded thoughtfully. Maybe. After I get settled with school and the literacy program. She glanced at me.
Actually, I was thinking it might be perfect for you. The suggestion caught me off guard. Me? Why not? You're patient, kind, full of wisdom from your many years on this earth? She teased, then grew serious. There are a lot of kids out there who could use someone like you in their corner, Dad. The idea settled over me slowly. Since retiring, I'd kept to myself, tending my garden, reading books, living quietly. The thought of making a difference in a young person's life, of sharing the lessons I'd learned through my own mistakes and victories, stirred something that had been dormant for too long. I'll think about it, I promised. Lisa smiled knowingly. You'll do more than think about it. I know that look. Later that afternoon, I found myself at the community center talking with the program coordinator, a warm, energetic woman named Diane, who explained how the mentorship process worked. We try to match mentors and mentees based on shared interests or experiences, she explained. The commitment is just a few hours a week, but the impact can be enormous. I filled out the application form, feeling both nervous and excited. It had been a long time since I'd stepped outside my comfortable routine, since I'd opened myself to new connections. When I returned home, Lisa was in the kitchen making dinner, another change in our household pattern. Since coming back, she'd gradually taken on more cooking, unearthing her mother's old recipes and filling the house with familiar aromas. How was the community center? She asked, stirring something that smelled deliciously of garlic and herbs. Enlightening, I filled out the mentor application. Her smile was bright with approval. I knew you would. I may be too old for this, I admitted. These kids might want someone more relevant. Lisa turned down the heat under her pan and faced me. Dad, what those kids need isn't someone who knows the latest TikTok trend. They need someone who listens, who shows up consistently, who believes in them even when they don't believe in themselves. She touched my arm. They need exactly who you are. Her confidence warmed me. We'll see. They'll let me know in a couple of weeks if I've been matched with anyone. They'd be fools not to take you. She turned back to her cooking. Now, set the table. I'm trying Mom's famous chicken piccata, and it'll be ready in 5 minutes. Over dinner, Lisa shared more about her meeting with Jamie and the literacy program. Her animation, her passion for helping the struggling young readers reminded me powerfully of Martha. My wife had possessed that same fire when talking about causes she believed in, that same determination to make a tangible difference in people's lives. You remind me of your mother tonight, I said when she paused for breath. Lisa's eyes softened. Really? That's the nicest thing you could possibly say. It's true. She had that same light in her eyes when she was working on something that mattered to her.
I nodded, understanding what she meant. Our neighborhood wasn't fancy or exclusive, but it was alive with genuine connections. Mrs. Sullivan bringing over tomatoes from her garden, the Rodriguez family hosting block parties every 4th of July, children moving freely between yards and houses in a way that had become increasingly rare. Sometimes I think we've lost sight of what makes a place worth living in, I mused. It's not the square footage or the zip code, it's whether you're surrounded by people who notice when you're not there. Lisa considered this. That's exactly it. In all the months I lived with Mark, I never once had a neighbor knock on my door just to say hello or see if I needed anything. She set her empty bowl aside. I was so focused on climbing up, I didn't realize what I was leaving behind. The next day brought a small manila envelope in the mail addressed to Lisa. Inside was a simple gold necklace with a small pearl pendant, her grandmother's, which Lisa had included in the wedding accessories she'd left at the hotel. A note accompanied it, written in a masculine hand. Lisa, found this with your things. Thought you might want it back as it seemed important. I hope you're well. The watch sits on my dresser and reminds me daily that some traditions are worth honoring, even if ours wasn't meant to be. Mark. Lisa read the note twice, then handed it to me. He's changed, she said quietly. Or perhaps he's finding his way back to who he was meant to be too, I suggested. Sometimes it takes losing something to recognize what matters. Lisa fastened the pearl necklace around her throat, her fingers lingering on the clasp. We all get lost sometimes, I suppose. The lucky ones find their way back. Over the next few days, Lisa threw herself into preparing for her new role with the literacy program. She created lesson plans, gathered children's books from our attic, and spent hours researching effective teaching strategies for struggling readers. I watched her work with growing admiration. This was the daughter I had raised, passionate and determined, focused on giving rather than taking. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, Lisa with her teaching materials spread around her, me with the newspaper, she looked up suddenly. Dad, do you remember that camping trip we took when I was 10, when it rained the entire weekend? I laughed at the memory. How could I forget? 3 days in a leaking tent with no dry firewood in sight. Mom wanted to go home after the first night, but you insisted we stay. You said sometimes the best memories come from the worst conditions. And was I right? Lisa smiled. You were. I still remember us huddled in that tent, you telling ghost stories by flashlight, Mom making shadow puppets on the tent walls. We laughed until our sides hurt. Her expression grew thoughtful. I think that's what I started to forget. That joy doesn't come from perfect circumstances, it comes from how you choose to experience whatever circumstances you're in. The insight struck me as profound, especially coming from the same young woman who just weeks ago had been consumed with creating the perfect wedding, the perfect impression, the perfect facade. That's a valuable lesson to relearn. Lisa nodded. I'm trying to remember who I was before I started measuring my worth by designer labels and social connections, before I began thinking that happiness was something you could buy if you just had enough money. I set my newspaper aside. And who were you, Lisa? She thought for a moment. I was curious, determined, kind, I think, though not always patient. I cared about making a difference, even in small ways. She looked at me. I was your daughter. You still are, I reminded her gently. You always will be. The next afternoon, I received a call from the community center. Diane, the program coordinator, sounded pleased. Robert? We have a potential match for you in the mentor program. A 14-year-old boy named Miguel. His father isn't in the picture, and his mother works 2 jobs. He's struggling in school, particularly with reading. Given your daughter's involvement with literacy and your own background, we thought you might connect well. I felt a flutter of nervousness. When would I start? We'd like you to come in next Tuesday to meet him. If both you feel comfortable, the formal mentorship would begin the following week. After agreeing to the meeting, I sat in my garden thinking about this new turn in my own journey. At 67, I had imagined my life was largely settled into its final pattern. The idea of forming a new relationship, of potentially making a significant difference in a young person's life, was both daunting and exhilarating.
When Lisa returned home that evening, I shared the news about Miguel. "That's wonderful, Dad." Her enthusiasm was immediate. "A 14-year-old boy needs exactly the kind of steady, patient guidance you can provide." "I hope so. It's been a long time since I interacted regularly with teenagers." Lisa grinned. "I don't know. You handled teenage me pretty well, and I was a nightmare." I laughed. "You had your moments." Her smile softened. "Seriously, though, this could be really good for both of you." Later that night, unable to sleep, I found myself standing in the doorway of Lisa's room, watching her peaceful form under the covers. In sleep, she looked young again, vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed herself to be while awake. My mind traveled back across the years. Lisa, as a toddler, arms raised for me to pick her up. Lisa on her first day of kindergarten, brave smile not quite hiding her fear. Lisa in her cap and gown at high school graduation, ready to take on the world. And now here she was again, finding her way back to the path she was meant to walk. Not without stumbles or wrong turns, but with a clarity and purpose that made my heart swell with pride. She had faced perhaps the hardest choice a person can make, admitting a fundamental mistake and walking away from it, even at great personal cost. I thought about Miguel, the boy I would soon meet. What wrong turns might he have already taken? What courage might he need to find his way? Perhaps this was why Lisa had encouraged me toward the mentor program, not just for what I could give, but for what I might receive in return. A new purpose, a new connection, a new chapter when I had thought my story was winding down. As I returned to my own room, I passed the small table where I kept my most treasured possessions. Among them was my grandfather's watch, not the original, which had gone to Mark, but the replica I'd kept. I picked it up, feeling its familiar weight in my palm. Time passes, but family endures. For weeks, I had seen this experience solely in terms of Lisa's journey, her mistake, her courage, her growth. But standing there in the quiet house, watch in hand, I recognized that this had been my journey too. A journey back to purpose, to connection, to the understanding that even at 67, life could still surprise me with new beginnings. I returned the watch to its place and went to bed, feeling more at peace than I had in years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new growth for both of us. And whatever came, we would face it as we had faced everything else, together, as family. The changing seasons mirrored our evolving lives. As autumn deepened into winter, the world outside transformed. Trees standing bare against gray skies, the first tentative snowflakes drifting down, holiday lights appearing in windows along our street. Inside, unseen changes continued in both Lisa's life and mine.
subtle shifts in perspective and purpose. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Lisa came home with unexpected news. She'd been offered a small apartment at a reduced rate in exchange for tutoring the landlord's 10-year-old son twice a week. "It's perfect," she told me, eyes bright with excitement. "Just 5 blocks from campus, furnished, and I can afford it on my program stipend without dipping into savings." I felt a complicated mixture of pride and sadness. I was genuinely happy for her independence, yet I'd grown accustomed to her presence in the house again. "When would you move in?" I asked, working to keep my voice neutral. "That's the thing," she said, settling onto the sofa beside me. "He doesn't need it until January 15th, which lines up perfectly with the start of the spring semester." She hesitated. "Unless you're eager to reclaim your quiet house sooner?" I laughed. "Not at all. I've rather enjoyed having you around." "Good." She leaned her head against my shoulder in a gesture that reminded me vividly of her childhood. "I've enjoyed being here too. More than I expected to, honestly." That weekend, Miguel and I tackled a more ambitious workshop project, a bookshelf for his room. His mother had mentioned that his books were piled haphazardly around his bedroom floor, and I suggested we might build something together to solve the problem. "Really? You think I could build something like that?" The doubt in his voice revealed how rarely he'd been given opportunities to create something substantial. "Absolutely. I'll teach you everything you need to know." I showed him how to measure and mark the wood, how to use the saw safely, how to sand the edges smooth. Throughout the process, I noticed something remarkable. When faced with a task he'd never tried before, he didn't retreat into self-doubt or bravado.
Instead, he approached it with careful attention, asking questions when needed, taking pride in each small accomplishment. "This feels good," he said at one point, running his hand over a perfectly sanded board, "making something that'll last." His comment struck me as profound, coming from a 14-year-old. "That's one of life's great satisfactions," I agreed, "creating something useful with your own hands." By Sunday afternoon, we had completed a simple but sturdy bookshelf, which Miguel stained a rich mahogany color. When his mother came to pick him up, he proudly showed her what he'd built. "It's beautiful, mijo," she said, genuine amazement in her voice. "You made this?" Robert, showed me how." He glanced at me, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. "But yeah, I did most of the work." "We'll need help getting it to your car," I said. "It's solid oak. Should last him through college and beyond." As we loaded the bookshelf into her car, Miguel's mother touched my arm lightly. "You don't know what this means to him," she said quietly. "To make something with his hands, to have someone believe he can." I thought of the pocket watch that had triggered so much change in our lives, how objects can carry meaning far beyond their practical purpose. Miguel's bookshelf wasn't just somewhere to store books. It was tangible proof of his capability, his patience, his growing confidence. "He's a remarkable young man," I told her. "It's my privilege to spend time with him." For Thanksgiving, Lisa insisted on cooking the entire meal herself, a first. In previous years, it had always been Martha who orchestrated the holiday feast, with Lisa and me serving as her helpers. After Martha passed, we'd typically gone to a restaurant or accepted invitations from neighbors. This year, however, Lisa was determined to revive the tradition in our own home. "I found Mom's recipe cards," she explained, pulling out a small wooden box filled with yellowing index cards covered in Martha's neat handwriting. Her famous apple sage stuffing, her cranberry relish, all of it. I looked at the familiar handwriting, a lump forming in my throat. "You sure you want to tackle all this? It's a lot of work." Lisa's expression was determined. "I want to. It's time." She hesitated. "And I invited some guests, if that's okay. Janie and her husband, Olivia from the literacy program, and Miguel and his mom. They don't have family in town, and they usually just have a frozen dinner on Thanksgiving." I smiled, touched by her thoughtfulness. "That sounds perfect. The more the merrier." "One more thing," Lisa added, a mischievous glint in her eye.
I need you to be in charge of the pies. Mom always said your crust was better than hers. The day before Thanksgiving found us both in the kitchen, Lisa preparing dishes that could be made ahead, me carefully rolling out pie dough for apple and pumpkin pies. The familiar rhythm of holiday preparation filled the house with warmth and savory aromas that triggered bittersweet memories. I miss her most at times like this, Lisa said softly, looking up from the cranberries she was chopping. Me too. I crimped the edge of a pie crust, remembering how Martha used to tease me about my obsessive attention to detail. But there's comfort in carrying on traditions, isn't there? Like she's still here in some way. Lisa nodded. I think that's why I wanted to do this so badly, to feel connected to her again. She gestured around the kitchen. In this space, doing these things, using her recipes, it's like she's guiding my hands. Thanksgiving Day arrived bright and clear, sunlight glinting off fresh snow that had fallen overnight. The house filled with delicious smells, and by early afternoon with voices as our guests arrived. Miguel and his mother, Elena, came first, both dressed in their Sunday best, bringing a dish of homemade tamales. A family recipe, Elena explained, that her grandmother had taught her. Something from our tradition to share with yours, she said shyly, placing the colorful dish on the table. Janie and her husband arrived next, followed by Olivia. Soon the living room buzzed with conversation, the awkwardness of new acquaintances quickly melting into the easy warmth of shared holiday spirit. I watched Lisa move among our guests, confident and gracious, so like her mother. It made my heart ache with pride and memory. When we gathered around the table, I found myself at the head, looking out at this unexpected family we had assembled, not bound by blood or legal ties, but by choice, by care, by the simple decision to show up for one another.